to this seminar on nailing your next interview. My name is Marilena Heinrich, and I am the coordinator for the Women's Informal Network from FAO's side. And tonight we have the pleasure of welcoming you all, and in particular, Ms. Rocio Villarreal, who is a professional recruiter and who will give us hints and tips about an interview or how we should be doing the interviews. So the hints and tips are especially for us women, professional women, and how we can make sure that our interviews will be, helping us land a new job, basically. Very briefly, sorry, just 1 second. Okay, so Rocio was born in Mexico, and she lived and studied in New York and Germany. She has a broad background. She started by being a designer, a graphic designer, and then became an HR specialist. And she has worked for various global consulting companies for the past 13 years. And she's also founder of her own consulting company, Tact Consulting. And she's helping clients in developing their career path, starting from the revision of their CVs and also the LinkedIn profiles, and also with the preparation for interviews. So we will be hearing more from Rocio, who will give us a presentation. And then after the presentation, we will open up for questions and answers. And so you will be able to raise your blue hand or write your question in the chat, and we will try to address as many as we can. So without any further ado, I would like to again welcome you, Rocio. Thank you for being with us. And I would like to hand over to you.
Thank you so much, Marilena. It is a pleasure to be here. I feel honored. Thank you for inviting me, Marilena, and of course, my friend Sara Fornavallo for recommending me. I really appreciate it, and it is really very, very nice to see you all. So many faces here. It's really exciting. Yes, as Marilena was mentioning, I have been working for the past 13 years for various consulting companies and headhunting companies as well. So most of the time I've been recruiting, I've been interviewing people. And what I want to do today is share with you my side of the recruiter point of view, okay? So also, I am eager to hear from you, your feedback or any comments in the end. Please let me know. I will be more than happy to discuss, okay? All right. Okay. So here, first, I'm going to start with some of the key facts that are currently happening with men and women. We're, of course, concentrating on women's point of view, but also seeing some numbers, okay? So 25% is the percentage of females who are sharing executive positions. 30% of women are less likely to be considered in hiring processes than men. 60% of men apply to a job. Men apply to jobs even if they only meet only 60% of the qualifications, where women only apply if they meet 100% of the qualifications. If anybody has any comments in between, let me know, okay? Just, you can speak, okay? So these numbers give us a very good idea of what the market looks like now, right? Okay. It takes 6 seconds approximately for a recruiter to scan a CV. Okay, so we need to be very mindful of what we want to get out there in our CV. Now, we always recommend a short CV, 1 page, 2 pages at the most. And some of the things we want to include here are a photo. I cannot stress enough how important it is to have a professional photo on your CV. It really makes a difference to have something showing your face, a very nice pose, and done professionally. We also recommend chronological resumes, starting with your last experience or current experience going back, to try to reduce the amount of information you have, like the first, if you have a lot of experience already, seasoned executive or something, you can, the first experiences can be shorter, whereas the last experiences are the ones you want to highlight. You also want to mention the milestones. For example, stating facts and figures of your achievements, accomplishments. It's very important to not leave those out in your resume, okay? You also want to be very concise. Don't go into too much detail into each one. Really try to bring out what's most important. And be very mindful also of, you're going to be asked for references. So make a list of people who can give you good references, even if you didn't leave your past job in the best terms. Try to make sure you have good ex-colleagues or HR department who can give references about you. This is going to be very important for your next interview, because if you move forward with the process, you're going to have to give some names for references, okay? Now, your CV needs to be up to date, as well as your LinkedIn profile. Your LinkedIn profile is where recruiters are going to look for you. This is the first place. So again, you have to have a professional photo. There are many people, I mean, it sounds very logical, but believe it or not, people sometimes don't have a picture. They don't have their full name. They only have their first name with an initial, with no picture. It's not up to date. That's not what we want to show. We want to show how professional we are. We want to show our picture and our latest experience that we have. Here, we also want to give some concise examples of what we've been doing in our career, as well as our achievements. Okay. Now we want to talk about the job. We want to prepare for the interview. How are we going to prepare? The best way is, you found the job posting, you applied, you got a call from the recruiter. What are you going to do? You have a meeting set up for next week. So you're going to do some research, okay? Now, here with research, we know success occurs when opportunity meets preparation. We need to be very well prepared. How do we get prepared for this? We're going to search the company. We're going to search their website. This is not enough. We need to know what they're doing, how well they're doing, what their numbers are, how big they are, the department we're applying for. Is this, how big is this a department? Who's working there? Maybe we can make a LinkedIn search of who the colleagues are there. Maybe we know somebody from LinkedIn. Sometimes we have contacts on LinkedIn that we are not even aware about, and we find people we are connected in first or second connections on LinkedIn that we can reach out to and just have an informal conversation with them and ask them about this company. Also, social media, there's a lot of information there on them. There's many companies who are on Instagram, Facebook. Make a search. Some companies focus more on social media than on their website, giving information on job postings. Also search articles about the companies. How are they doing currently? Is there anything you want to ask in particular about how they're doing? Maybe something just happened, maybe just their CEO changed, or something in the market happened, or there's something in the news that you want to be aware about, to have an open conversation about this and discuss with the recruiter. This always looks good when you're well prepared and they know that you have been searching about them. Also, like I said, the contacts on LinkedIn, reach out. Um, Personally, I have a story I would like to share. It was a while ago when I got a call from Oliver Wyman, for example, and I noticed that I had a contact from Oliver Wyman, and I reached out to this person and I said, I didn't know I had you. And he was the one who highly recommended this company. It's a consulting company. It's a wonderful company. And this helped me so much because he wasn't even working there anymore, but he had been there. This really goes out a long way. And this also, by the way, helps you with your network. So now we want to talk about the position we're applying for. As we mentioned, women feel insecure, or sometimes they don't fulfill all the requirements of this position. We can also think about not exactly that position that we filled, but something that we've been doing very similar that we can really apply to this position because of some of the requirements they're asking for. So understanding the job description is very important. Maybe you can share during the interview also, you can share experiences that maybe you did something similar in another position, but like managerial roles or leadership roles, or different experiences we can share with the recruiters so they can get a better idea of what our experience is. Also, the skill set. This is another thing that maybe we did something in the past we're not currently doing, but is required. We should also get into that during our interview to better explain how we've been having similar experiences in different roles, but that you can apply them to this position, okay? Another thing is understanding the recruiting process. Once you have the first interview, asking, what does this process look like? How long does it take? There are companies that are very fast, some take longer, some do panel interviews, some do different types of interviews. It's always nice to know what is this process going to be looking like for me? Are they going to be seeing many different candidates, or is this something like they need to fill very quickly, or is this a new position? Try to find out as much as you can about the position. Also, a very important question would also be, why is this position open? Is this a new position that is just being created, or did somebody leave? And if they left, what was the reason? Like, this always comes across as a candidate who's very interested in really being able to understand if they can really fill the shoes of the person who left. Maybe they left for another job, or maybe this person was let go. Why? You know, it's always very important to understand the recruiting process. So now we're going to get prepared. And this is something that we really need to be very conscious of: our language, how women project themselves. How do we show ourselves? We want to be confident. Confidence is silence. Insecurities are loud. Women have a tendency of minimizing their achievements or even their comments, apologizing. All these, I just want to share to try to be more conscious of how we talk, how we project ourselves. I just had a mock interview with a very, very close friend of mine. And she is very, very successful, had never had an interview before. So I practiced this with her, and she started with, I am just a lawyer. I have only done this and that, litigation, etc., internationally. And I'm like, these words, we need to take them out of our language, really, really be conscious of this. Asking questions like, am I making myself clear? I'm not sure about this, but what do you think if these types of ways of communicating for women, we're trying to sound like we're humble, we're being polite, but the real thing is that we're showing either insecurities or not projecting, how professional we are. We need to be very mindful of this. So here are some speech habits that women have. Minimizing, adding words like just, actually, I'm not an expert at, or in, or only, or apologizing, like saying always sorry, can you please help me, or excuse me. Um, Underestimating. For example, some women also do not add their whole experiences, feeling they're going to be branded as a show off or coming off like trying to appear as something they're not. But the truth is, if you have accomplishments and achievements, you need to include them and be sure about that. We want to hear a professional woman talk about her achievements. What has she reached? If it's a number, if it's some saving, or if it's growth, whatever it is, mention it and feel you did this. You can also say, I mean, it has nothing to do with sharing about the team, but if you achieve something, you have to say this. Don't exclude experiences, feeling you're going to be judged or anything. On the contrary, recruiters really look for that. Also, skills and achievements. Make sure to include those and mention them in your interview. It's also very important to have a narrative. Remember, recruiters interview so many people. How do we want to be remembered? Or what do we want to be remembered for? So you want to make an impact with the recruiter. This is your first contact. This is your first opportunity. How are they going to remember you? What is it that you want to strike as like an impact that you want to make? So, I'm sorry? Choose one aspect you want to be remembered for. Confidently express a specific contribution you can make to this job. Also, you can provide concise examples of your accomplishments. This is what I was mentioning previously. If you have a story to share, that gives us a great reminder of, oh, I remember who Marilena was. She was a person who told me this about herself. Even if it's something, it can be something personal. Like I will never forget, this is another example, a good one, of a great candidate we had for engineering at Oliver Wyman as well. And he mentioned, if I knew that the Oliver Wyman offices in New York were hit by 9/11, and I had no idea. And that struck me like this was the first person who mentioned this. Nobody knew this in Mexico and or in New York, many people, because many were new employees. And I noticed he had done his homework. He had really gone back in history of the company and read about details that many people don't even bother to look at. It's not nice to apply to a company and have the recruiter call and ask you, so what do you know about the company? And just say, oh, I just visited your website and I think you do some consulting. No, go more into, even if you don't understand exactly what they do, just ask. I read this, but I have some questions. This, get engaged, get them hooked on you, on what you want to say. So now we've all become, by this time in life, professional Zoomers, right? I mean, it sounds very logical to say, or maybe that we don't need to say this, but it's necessary. We need to dress appropriately for this job, for this interview. Depending on the different types of practices you're going to be applying for, maybe it's a different sector, but maybe it's a financial sector or consulting sector. They dress more formally than maybe a tech sector, for example. Try to dress or ask even, if it's business casual, if it's formal. If you don't want to ask, you can go into their website and get a good idea of what they do. But you will never make a mistake by dressing business casual. I would always recommend that. Try to connect some minutes before starting the interview. Make sure that you test your tech. I mean, it sounds that we already know this, but it happens again and again, okay? Even though we're all professionals in this, maybe we get nervous and we forget to just check again. No distractions, turn your cell phone off, have the door closed of your office or the room where you're going to be interviewing, no noise, try to be really concentrated and not getting any distractions, being in a quiet room. Also, the background is very important. We want to be very clean and very clear background. No, nothing to take their attention off of you, which is what they're interested in. Also, position yourself correctly, looking in the camera. Don't forget to look in the camera. And close all your applications on your PC. Okay. Growing your network. If there is something I want to leave today as something very, very important, is to really grow your network. Go out there, get your name out there. How do we do this? Using social media in a smart way. By this, I want to say there are a lot of recruiters going out there and checking Instagram accounts, Facebook, not only LinkedIn. Be very mindful of what you post. You don't want to post very personal things that any recruiter is going to be able to look at on Facebook or Instagram or anywhere else. So this is what we mean by using social media in a smart way. Now, if you want to get your name out there on LinkedIn, which is where most recruiters search for people, you can have regular posts, maybe interesting news articles, tagging people, using hashtags, even reaching out to people. There are many people you can contact out of your circle who maybe you're looking for a certain growth opportunity or your next step in your career, and you know somebody or you've seen somebody on LinkedIn who could maybe help you. You can even look for a mentor or somebody who might have an initial call with you and just give you some tips or advice. I also mentioned this during getting ready or preparing for the interview with getting information on the company. Like I said, you might have a contact on your network on LinkedIn that you don't even know about that you can reach out to and talk about. Maybe also there's an opportunity that does not really, it is not really what you're looking for, but it's something similar. You can reach out also to HR people on LinkedIn and just ask them, are there any opportunities coming up in the next, I don't know, 3 to 6 months? Asking people if they can give you some advice of how they got, or maybe they changed their careers. How did they do that? Could you give me some advice? You know, do you have some time for a call? 10 minutes, whatever. And you can just really reach out to these people and don't feel like don't feel ashamed, or don't feel you shouldn't be doing this, because this is what people do. Believe me, I get resumes every day, calls, interviews all the time. But I've noticed that people really don't like this way of, don't feel they should be doing this, or so investing in contacts you already have. We have so many connections already. It's always, if you're looking for a new job opportunity, or are thinking of changing, or some sort of reinvention that you're looking for in your next step, there are many contacts we already have. For example, maybe we did a master's or university, that we can call or contact ex colleagues from university. What are they doing now? Where are they working? Maybe they can give us some tips or advice on something they might know, because we studied the same thing. Or ex-colleagues even that have moved on to different sectors or companies, also reach out to them. Look, I'm looking for a new job opportunity. This is what I'm looking for. If you know of anything or anybody. Also, these contacts can be great sources, because they might know of somebody else who is looking for maybe a position that you're looking for. Connect you with those people as well. This is what we do all the time as well, sourcing people. This gets you really, really far in looking for your next opportunity. I want to thank you say thank you with a great quote that I love and I want to share.
But while I may be the first woman in this office, I will not be the last.
Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you very much, Rocio, for your tips and your insights from your experience. As you were talking, there was a lot of writing in the chat. And I think, first of all, your presentation has been very much appreciated, not only in the content, but also in the form. So someone, I think Eva, was asking what technology you're using for that. Before we go into the content.
Okay. Oh, okay, great. This it's called Prezi. It's a presentation software. You can go to the online, and this was highly recommended to me by Sara. I have to give her all the credit for this.
Okay, so thank you, and thanks, Sara, for Prezi. And so on your first point with regards to the picture, now you were mainly talking outside UN, right? We have a lot of UN women here, and within the UN system, the recruitment process is quite strict, usually more or less the same. There may be a variety in the process, in the sense that some have a test, some others only have the interview. There may be different phases, but one thing that they have in common is that they do not ask for the age, and they do not ask for pictures. So based on your advice that a picture makes it easier for us to be remembered, perhaps we can take this as an advice for our private CV, the one-pager that we would send off to colleagues or people in our networks outside of the UN, or even outside of the recruitment system. We can put our picture there. And then in the system, we usually have a very long personal profile form that we have to fill out and put everything except a photo and our date of birth to avoid biases. A lot of the discussions were also around being humble versus showing off. I think men are very good at bragging and telling everybody how great they are, while very often we in terms of women, tend to be more humble, and we hope that this humbleness is being appreciated. So I think the question here to you is, how much is being humble being appreciated versus trying to be more confident and more sort of showing off?
I think we need to find a sweet spot in not overly or underly doing it. We're not bragging when we say I achieved a growth of 30%, etc., in this company, in this area. We should definitely mention that. We do not need to apologize or be humble about it. We need to say what is. Those are facts. So we need to mention them. Don't think that because you put that on your resume, it's going to be felt like or coming on like showing off or bragging. On the contrary. Regarding the picture, Marilena, you're right. Yes, there are different, also very different countries that have different laws, and we need to also be very mindful about that. I was really talking about the LinkedIn profile also as well, and your CV if you want to add it on your CV, but it's always good. I mean, talking about the private sector, sorry, not, okay, getting everything confused here, but if you're gonna have a picture, just do it professionally. There are pictures that are not professional on LinkedIn, and it's nice to know that, you know, that there's a face to the name, and show yourself professionally out there.
Okay, thank you very much. That's a very good tip. So in the UN, the interviews are mainly competency based. And so we are always being advised to use the STAR system, where we basically, you refer to it as the narrative, right? How do we want to be remembered? And usually in the UN system, we have the specific question related to the various aspects that are in the vacancy announcement. So would you have any tips for making that narrative like particularly to the point, or something that, you know, makes it catchier?
It's always good to have very clear examples. Write them down before going to that interview. Examples of your achievements. You're going to be asked questions, well, not talking about the UN, but also in general about the STAR or any other type of, they're going to ask you questions like, what have your achievements or your greatest achievements been? Give one concise example, 2-liner, 3-liner, no more. But make sure that it's very clear, it's very concise, and it's brief. We don't need to go too deep into it. We also are going to be asked different questions, such as uncomfortable ones, like, have you ever had discrepancies or any problems with your manager? How did you deal with them? Or how do you deal with people reporting to you? Or, you know, many different things that can always come up. Just be prepared. Even if you were fired from your last job, you know, just be prepared to what you're going to say. They were downsizing, there was a restructure, or it's not, this is also something very important. It's not a thing about personality, because personality is one thing. Another thing is maybe you did not feel comfortable working at that institution or at that company because it wasn't, you know, your best place to work in. This is something we also need to find out. Is this a place I want to work in, or are these people I see myself working with? This is also something we need to take into consideration.
Okay, thank you very much. I can see that there is a little bit of back and forth with regards to the I achieved this, I did that, versus the we in terms of thinking in a team spirit. Now, for example, we in our team. And so there are some people who are referring that they have been told off for using I, others, you know, for not using it. So what's your advice with regards to the using I versus we?
Okay, and I thank you for that question, because it's very, we might feel it's a thin line. If we did this with a team, we need to mention that. If we did this on our own, there are things we do on our own. We also need to mention that as well. Just be honest. We don't need to hide anything. Of course, we're all a team, I know, but honestly, I achieved a savings of 30% in the construction of our new offices. Nobody helped me with that because I was the one who did the project management. This is just an example, okay? This is where we need to say how we did it, why, and how much. You know, you need to have those answers clear and stating them. If you worked on a team, of course, we need to mention that. I worked together in a team of 5 people. We achieved this and accomplished that with, and giving that example as well.
Okay, thank you very much. You mentioned doing research earlier, right? About the company or the department or the organization we are applying for. So how would you suggest we incorporate the research we've done into our interview? Because usually we have those 20 minutes, right? And we have to reply to those questions that they're asking us, be on the spot. So how can we show that we have, you know, done the homework?
Yes. Many recruiters are going to ask you first thing or during that conversation, so what do you know about our company? What do we do? You need to get a little bit deeper into just you sell cars, you know, you're the top seller, you're the number one, or in the US or in Europe, or, you know, try to be more specific in that. Again, depending on the sector, but also be prepared to ask anything, if there was anything in the news. It's also very important to ask, what is happening with this? I read this last week in the news. Can you tell me more about this? I'm very interested. If there's also like any major changes, maybe they've been getting into investing, or they were just bought off from somebody else. Talk about these things. Let the recruiter know you're informed, you're prepared, you know what you're talking about. And if you don't know exactly what the team looks like, you can ask, how big is the team? I know the company has 1,200 employees, but how big is the HR team, or, you know, this area?
Okay, you sort of answered a question that I personally have, which is usually at the end of the UN interview, where they ask you 5 questions that are competency-based. Then they ask you, do you have any question for us? And usually what comes is, like you were indicating earlier, what's the process like? When are you looking for the person to start on the job, or things like that? But perhaps there we have the opportunity to ask a question that is more related to the team or to the job itself. And would you have any advice on that last question? How we can?
Of course. This is very important as well, because we want to know also if this is something for us. It's not only, you know, I love this job, or this job description looks really great and I'm doing great in my interview, but is this something I see myself in? How is a team like? How do you work? What are the policies you work with? Also very important, what are the achievements that are expected from this position in the next 3 months, in the next 6 months, in the first year? What are these expectations? Can you give me some numbers? This is very, very important. I think this is key to really finding out if this is what you really want. After hearing that, the recruiter can go much deeper into what this position really entails.
Okay, so I have a little bit lost track now of the chat because there is a lot of back and forth and giving advice to each other. So really, I would like to open it up now for any comments or questions from the floor directly to Rocio. Ladies, the floor is open. Anyone who would like to take the floor and make any, you know, comment on your own reflections? Yes, I can see Lauren and then Wadzi. Lauren.
Thank you very much for organizing, colleagues, and thank you, Rocio, for your interesting presentation. I missed the very beginning, but I heard a couple of things that were very interesting. One was, I mean, I've always heard this thing about women use words that don't value their contribution, but the one I hadn't heard was underestimating or underselling skills and experience. Because I would like to have your opinion about the sort of trade-off between brevity, for example, in a CV, or in an online application system, and giving your full set of skills or experience. One area for me that's difficult, and probably some of the colleagues also from FAO and IFAD, is a lot of us are researchers and we write a lot of papers. And there's like a section, if you've ever written anything and you're supposed to say, so I don't know if you're supposed to say everything or if you're supposed to choose. So that kind of the trade-off between not underestimating what you've done, but really giving yourself credit for the accomplishments that you have, especially as you get more senior. Because it's easy to have a one-page CV when you're 23, but not so easy when you're 43, maybe, or 53.
I understand, Lauren. And thank you for that question, because that's a very good question and it's very commonly asked. Again, depending on what your position is and what you've done, it's very different to have a resume from you than from somebody in an HR department. We have not written, papers or articles or books even. So what I would recommend, Lauren, is to have a 1 or 2 pager resume. Here you want the main achievements or skills that you have. You want to highlight those. You can have a second resume with all the different articles you've written or any work you've done, more specifically mentioned in that other resume. I would have 2 options for that. Does that make sense? I mean, because this is what many people do when they have written, it's a long list and only certain people during this hiring process are going to be looking at that part of your resume. So I would highly recommend to have those 2, but yes, definitely you do need to mention all your work.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Lauren, for that question. Wadzi, the floor is yours.
Hi, Rocio. This has been really great. I even updated my picture on LinkedIn because I had a book on it while you were speaking. My first question is, I've done a lot of consulting. So I've been in professional organizations, but a lot of my experience has been through consultancies. So a bit like Lauren's question, how do I then show all these consultancies which show different skills, which are not perhaps just part of my formal employment? So I've done 96 consultancies, right, in different countries. My second question is, I get lost on LinkedIn. It's one of those social media places that I have great difficulty with. So for a person like me, and I love social media. I love Facebook. How do I so do I narrow it down by, like you said, I love networking, so that's not an issue for me. But what do I do? I narrow it down by sort of following people. How do I do it so that I sort of balance between, I just find it a very cumbersome platform to use. So it's not, Facebook is easy. It's even easy to tag a person or to, but LinkedIn in a professional sense is not an easy, for me. I know there must be people who can do it. I don't use Instagram and I don't use Twitter. Twitter in particular, I just can't. So how do I manage that? And I'm 54 years old, so I want to manage it in a way that also I minimize my time on screen. My third question, I find interviewing virtually really difficult because I'm a cue person, right? I respond to expression, to body movement, etc. So I find interviewing on Zoom extremely difficult. How and I know practice makes it easier, but what's a tip that I can give myself so that I don't, because I find myself getting a little nervous. Just because I can't see the body movement. I can't see the express, and it's very difficult when they're honest, when you've got 5 sort of interviewers on the screen to really sort of, you don't get the same vibe as in person. So those were my 3 questions. Thank you, Rocio.
Okay, thank you. Watsani, am I pronouncing it correctly?
Just call me Wadzi.
Okay, Watsi. Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. Yes. Regarding your first question, I know that consultants have done a lot of different projects and they are very important to be mentioned. The question would be, is this for your resume or for LinkedIn? What was for which one?
Well, I guess it's more for my resume because on LinkedIn I can't put 90.
Right, right. Okay, okay. On your resume, I definitely would recommend, it is very important to mention them all as well. Maybe you want to start your first page of your resume on maybe the companies you've worked for and what projects briefly mentioned. And then in the back, you can go more into detail on the projects you worked for. The second question was regarding LinkedIn, you get lost. Okay, the way I can recommend to make it easier, if you're searching for a certain company in particular, just go to companies and search for people there. What are you searching for? The people, the companies? Make that search. Make the search of the first, second, and third connections there on LinkedIn. Okay, and that's going to help you get more practice on that. And I really hope you take some time to get to know LinkedIn. I don't think it's as hard as it might seem at the beginning. Once you get the hang of it, you're really going to enjoy reaching out to people. Once you have the connection, you can always send them an email, you know, reaching out, contacting them. And regarding the Zoom interviews, I totally understand. There's nothing like being in person. I totally understand that. And it's a challenge for everybody. One thing I can recommend that makes it maybe a little bit harder is that we're also looking at ourselves, which is something that doesn't happen when we have a direct interaction with a person, right? So try not to look at yourself and look at the people, like have the speaker, you know, being the bigger picture in your Zoom than yourself, and just concentrate on talking to that person and try to imagine being with them, you know, trying to get that connection there going.
Thank you for asking that question, Watsi, and thank you, Rocio, for your answers. We also have experts here in our group, like Afshan Shafi, who will be very happy to respond to specific questions on how to navigate LinkedIn. So perhaps we can organize one session specifically to talk about LinkedIn, how to make a good profile, how to search for the companies and the people, and how to address them when you contact them for the first time out of the blue, basically.
Of course, yes.
Because
more
that
than
is
happy,
always a
more
little
than
bit...
happy. We can be more specific in different blocks, of course.
Right. And then we have a question in the chat from Alessandra. How would you suggest to approach the famous question about your weaknesses, Rocio? And then I see Annabella has a question. Perhaps we take the question from Annabella and then you can reply to both, Rocio, if you don't mind.
Okay.
Annabella.
Okay, I was just about to write in the chat. I think teacher in the chat brought up a really important question that sometimes, at least me, it throws me off, which is when you get asked something that's inappropriate. Like, what would you recommend? Like, do you call them out and say, I beg your pardon, could you say that again? I'm not, you know, and try to call them out? Or do you just fly over it and say, well, you know, when a personal situation comes up, I deal with it on a case-by-case basis and just, you know, move on to the next question. Like, because you kind of want to call them out on it, but you also know that it might backfire. So what's the reaction? Do you think that's well taken, or?
That is such a good question. And you cannot imagine how many people are still making these questions that are so inappropriate. Like, do you have children? Are you planning? Are you married? These are totally inappropriate. It depends on the recruiter. There are many, sadly, people that have really no experience and they think they can recruit. And like I was saying before, in different countries, different laws. I mean, in the US, in most states, you cannot ask the salary, right? Germany is also very particular in asking questions. I would not put myself in the position of in the, you know, the hot seat or the spot of calling them out, because maybe this is not your best card to play at that moment if you really like that position or job. I would just probably try to, you know, deal with it in a kind way, answering, like you said, I deal with these situations in a, you know, or maybe this is something I would not like to disclose or something like that, instead of calling the recruiter out, because you're not going to be moving forward. And if this is something you really want, you know.
So it's okay to say I would prefer not to disclose certain things? Okay.
Of course, it is your decision to reply if you want to. You don't even have to reply if you're married, if you have children, your salary, nothing. The only thing they can ask you are salary expectations.
Okay, thank you. And what about the weaknesses question?
The weaknesses is a very good one. And this is why I always say be prepared. This is always going to be a question that's going to be asked. Okay, so just have, you know, a couple of ideas of your weaknesses, you know, what you've learned from them, how you deal with them, and give an example, a specific example of how you've learned to deal with certain, you know, with an example at work of your weaknesses.
Okay, thank you very much. How do you reply to questions on examples of conflict with the supervisor, for example? That's one of those sample questions that we have, either conflict with the supervisor or having to deal with a difficult colleague.
We normally would recommend having different ideas, different ways of working instead of direct conflict with the supervisor.
Okay, thank you.
We always try to recommend, instead of saying directly conflict, maybe saying we had different ideas, we had different approaches to things, or even I didn't adapt to that culture of that company is even, you know, very acceptable to say as well. It's nothing wrong with you. It's just I didn't adapt. This is not the working environment I'm used to working at or with these people, you know. But try to avoid talking badly about a manager, because this is not what we want to hear. We don't want to hear there's going to be conflict with our company, you coming here, you know.
Hello? Yeah. And especially, as someone, Alessandra was saying, especially if your supervisor is on the interview panel, you certainly don't want to.
Exactly.
You certainly don't want to bring that up. Okay. So Taylor says that she has had trouble getting responses from people on LinkedIn, even when they had like connections in common. Would you have any advice for that first approach through LinkedIn?
Of course. If there's people, if you don't get an initial response, you can try again. If you don't, and you do have a connection in between that knows you, go to that connection and ask them, can you introduce me to this person? I'm really interested, and be very specific. I want to really discuss the working environment at this company, or there's a position I'm applying for. Can you please, you know, introduce us? This is very common, and I would highly recommend it. Go to that other person.
Okay, thank you very much. UN applications require us to list dependents, the spouse and children. Okay, so they know that we are married and have children, because our salary depends on whether we are single or we have dependents. So we have 4 more minutes until the very end. Are there any hot questions, not hot in terms of sexy, but hot in terms of your interest that you would like to ask Rocio? One?
Yes, if there's a moment.
The weakness question, weakness question was answered, yes. And the idea was basically to talk about how you deal with your weaknesses and how you overcome your weaknesses. Right, Rocio?
Right, correct. And be open about them also. It's perfectly normal to have weaknesses and strengths and to discuss these. Alessandra had a question.
How about using?
I'm sorry.
Okay.
No, it was the weaknesses question. My internet cut and I didn't hear properly.
Okay.
Okay, I see.
A quick question. I'm sorry. This is Gunmira Makiel. I'm from Washington. IFAD, formerly IFAD, but now I moved to IMF. My question is not maybe so much at the about the interviews, but IMF, as you know, is very male sort of dominated. Often I go to meetings, it's only men. My team is only men. The management is okay. We have MD. My question is sort of in general, when you are in this environment, male-oriented environment, to succeed, would you like advise to sort of mimic what they do and try to be, try to look more male, strong, I can do it approach?
No, because we're not.
I know. I had always mentors, women who say, "Oh, just be yourself," but still, the life is life, and you want to go where you want to go. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Gulmira. I definitely recommend being the woman that you are. You're not competing. You are in a way professionally, but you cannot compete with a man as a woman. You're a woman. You should just don't show insecurities. Just be, yourself, like your friends were telling you. Have very open conversations with them as well. I would just try to have more self-confidence around them. You will get we all have to get used to these. For example, my area is also full of men. I was dealing with only men. I think just showing that you would like to be perceived as very professional, and just show confidence in yourself. I think that's basically in very direct language. And I'm not saying be extremely assertive or anything. Just talk to them as you would with a group of women. I think that's the best thing the best way to look at it, with that confidence.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Wadzi, last question before we close.
What is the absolute no-no that you should never do at an interview? What immediately will put the recruiters off and will completely get you sort of not even considered?
There are many things even the most professional CEOs or CFOs do. It's not about not being professional or yes. Sometimes there's many things I can recommend. One of them is don't talk about salary or compensation range on the first interview. Maybe that would be one piece of advice. Another one is if you're applying to a job, don't say, I'm planning on having my own company or being independent. Those contradictory types of comments that might come out naturally, but we need to be mindful of what job we're applying to, Also, try to be self-aware. A lot of recruiters complain about that, not showing self-awareness. But basically, it depends, because it depends also on the profile they're looking for. You might be, I think what would get you off is just not being the right fit or not having the right experience. But in general, I think it's best to just be yourself and show what you have, what you've done, what you've gained, the experiences that you've had. Thank you.
Okay, I would like to thank you and have a round of applause for you, Rocio, for sharing all your insights.
Thank you.
And the chat continues with comments. And Lily Luna was saying, don't ask the interview panel how you did. Which is
Thank you. I would be more than happy to, go further with conversations. If there's any comments or anything, just please let me know. You know how to contact me. Okay.
Okay. Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
And just before we close, I would like to remind you all, the worldwide audience, that next week on Wednesday, we will have a sort of aperitivo to talk about the superpowers of the women who are leading now in times of crisis and how we can get inspired by them. And I shared a document with some profiles of successful women leading in times of crisis.